Rad Rob here. I wanted to introduce to you our new sponsor, Reaper Apparel Company. Reaper Apparel Company was born out of necessity, out of 2020 and the aftermath. The year of 2020 became a reminder that every minute counts, even the hard ones. And Reaper Apparel Company was built for those who refuse to die slowly. Reaper isn't just clothing, it's a lifestyle. A reminder to escape the mundane. A reminder to get you out of your comfort zone and live life. They were built to enjoy the time that they have here on this planet. Reaper Apparel Company has many different styles of hats, shirts, hoodies, sweatshirts, all with their unique logo and unique designs. And if you want to check them out, go to reaperapparelco.com. That's REAPERAPPARELCO.com. And if you use the promo code RADROB when you check out, you'll get 10% off every single purchase. So again, go to reaperapparelco.com, use the promo code RADROB to get 10% off at checkout. We'd like to thank Reaper Apparel Company for supporting the Rad Rob Radio Network.
Following podcast is brought to you exclusively by the Rad Rob Radio Network. Welcome to Uncanny.
Hey guys, welcome to our Uncanceled with Drake Wuertz. This is episode number 50, the big 50, and this is a live Q&A with the one and only Mr. Drake Wuertz here on youtube.com/RadRobGaming, also streaming live on Twitch, twitch.tv/RadRobGaming. I'd like to bring in the man of the hour, too sweet to be sour, former CZW Deathmatch wrestler, CZW Hall of Famer, former WWE and NXT referee, Drake Wuertz. Good evening, sir. Welcome.
Hey, good evening, Rad Rob. Episode 50. We are finally here. It's a big one. Live. As they used to say back in the day, live and in living color. Everything's in living color now. But anyway, live and in living color. Grateful to be here. How about our sponsors for the show, for the Rad Rob Radio Network, man?
Yes, as you see, I have my new hat on from Reaper Apparel Company, and we also have W Energy Drink is our sponsor as well. So, things are looking up. It is episode 50.
Ship me some of them energy drinks, Rad Rob. Come on.
Yes, I'll hook you up. All
right, sounds good.
We'll talk off there. So, this is episode 50. We have done a Q&A in the past, so I'm looking forward to this one. As everybody files in here in the chat, I do have a couple of questions sent to our email address, which I admit I am horrible at checking out. So I'm so sorry to those that send emails. I sometimes forget to check it, but we'll start off with a question from Five Finger Death Punch. Not the band.
Band?
Apparently a fan.
Okay.
He says, "Hello, Drake. What did your family think about when you told them that you were a deathmatch wrestler? Did they accept it or not? And how did you become a born-again Christian?" So when you met your lovely wife, Valerie, and you have told the story before, but just to refresh, how long did you wait to tell her that you were a deathmatch wrestler, or did she already know?
I kind of just really never told her. I just let it happen. Honestly, so, the way actually it came about, her and I had been dating for a couple of weeks, and I mentioned to her that, that I was a wrestler, right? But I tried to keep it on the. I mean, at this point, I was a full-time independent wrestler, traveling 3-4 days a week, every single week. So I just kind of tried to it's this wrestling thing that I do and everything, and then I had a local event in town, so I invited her to come, and it was the perfect way for her to be introduced to the world of independent professional and especially hardcore deathmatch wrestling. My match that night wasn't the main event, so I made her think that I was like, oh, you know what, she'll think I'm cool because I'm in the main event. But she the match that I was in, was a Fans Bring the Weapons match with none other than Jon Moxley. And so myself and Jon Moxley had a Fans Bring the Weapons match. This is January 2009 in Indianapolis, Indiana. And so this guy that she'd been dating for a couple of weeks is getting hit in the head with water jug baseball bats. And it was funny. So but that was kind of really her foray into the world of pro wrestling. And I had like scars on my body and stuff like that. So, but and then you know what, like it's got to be tough for anybody dating somebody in the professional wrestling business. But like for those couple of years before, obviously before we became parents, like it was really cool because Valerie traveled so much with me, and we made like fun. Like I remember, one time we went to Wrigley Field after a show, in the Chicagoland area. She traveled with me to Philadelphia. We used to hang out with the late great Danny Havoc and his bride at the time, and just had a lot of cool adventures on the road.
Right.
Just during those couple of years of time. So that's really how she just kind of. I never told her. I just kind of just showed her. So she stuck with me afterwards.
She is here watching. She said
she's watching and she's commenting. Yes, my friends in the business did think that it was because Valerie knew nothing about she knew about WWE, WWF and stuff, but she didn't know anything about indie wrestling. So it was cool, but everybody loved her right away. She was awesome. And then our house in Indiana became like a resting spot, or our gathering spot. Because, we lived in Indiana for people coming from the East Coast, people, coming from the Midwest to the East Coast, they'd gather about and party and hang out at our house. So on any given day, you could see Ricochet and Madman Pondo, and Masada coming out of my, on to the next town. So second part of the question, how did I become a born-again Christian? So, I'll give you kind of the Reader's Digest 30,000-foot view version of this. So I'd always believed in God, but didn't really have a relationship with him, especially, early on in my wrestling career. How I came to, inviting Christ, the Holy Spirit in my heart, and forming a relationship with him, where it became a relationship with my Heavenly Father rather than, religion, was when I got to my bottom. When I was at the depths of addiction, on the verge of losing my marriage and losing my family, losing my career. Whenever I got clean and got sober, that really opened up my heart and my mind to really having that relationship with what people in recovery call the higher power. I call Jesus Christ my Lord and Savior. And then I'd say in 2016 is when I really went all in, said that sinner's prayer, got water baptized, realized that I'm a sinner saved only by his grace, and cemented my place in eternity in heaven. And try to glorify him in all that I do, and just take grace and solace in the fact that his mercies are new each day.
Wayne Jerry has a question. Drake, when you were a referee, did you take any spots as a referee? Or
like bumps?
I think that's what
I guess that's what he's saying. Oh, heavens, yes. Yeah.
What are some of the most memorable ref bumps?
You know what? So, and again, during this era of WWE, so if you remember back in the Attitude Era, it happened like every week on TV. They wanted to make it fewer and far in between. But, Triple H, whenever the occasion would arise for it to happen, he would plug me in to that scenario. I think, man, there was a few, but I think my favorite one, it was in 2018. I want to say it was like July of 2018. Somebody can figure out the exact, but I want to say that's the time frame. It was when Tommaso Ciampa beat Aleister Black for the NXT Championship on NXT TV. And we kind of, the ideas have been flowing throughout the day about how they wanted to take me out, so to speak. And it was really cool because they pulled back the mat. I remember Tommaso was going to DDT Aleister Black on the concrete. And I was trying to be the sympathetic referee. Hey, that's too far. Come on. Whatever happened to where it ended up, those guys were on the inside of the ring. I was half stepping into the ring. And then Tommaso one of the guys hit the ropes, and then I like took a flat back bump on the concrete off the apron. But I had to make it. I couldn't like look like a wrestler taking it, like taking a picture perfect flat back. So I had to like take it like like an untrained referee taking it. But it worked out fantastically, and everybody in the back was happy with it. I think it made a good impact. That tied with my other favorite ref bump that happened during my time in WWE was in November 2019. It was the Bullet Club. I think they were just called the Club. AJ Styles, Machine Gun, and Luke Gallows versus it was Team NXT. I want to say Keith Lee, and I forget who else was on Team NXT. But anyway, I ended up taking the pounce from Keith Lee, and it just kind of like came out of nowhere. Like it was very unexpected, very unchoreographed looking, and I took a nice little inside out kind of bump for him. So there was like that was toward the tail end of my time on Twitter before Twitter went like super duper woke, and so I remember there was a gif of that on Twitter. It was pretty cool.
We've already had one troll in here that I've had to block. So I mean, we do expect them to show up because. Oh yeah,
hey, we're open free. We love and appreciate free speech, but I mean, if you're just trolling, then
I mean, I will ask his question, even though it's off color. And then after that, he said, I really came here to be a dick, but this is boring. So that's when I blocked him. Okay. But his question was actually I can't pull it up. I'll just read it to you. Drake, if you were for saving the children. Mm-hmm. Why are you working with a promoter who made some pretty disgusting porn films, including pretend child stuff? You have any idea what that would be?
I'd say he's alluding to my bookings with Rob Black. What I will say to that is, look, I am making a living. Vince McMahon's money spends just as well as Rob Black's, and Vince McMahon has allegedly done questionable stuff in the past as well. So yeah. I mean, it's what it is.
Yeah, I mean, we will answer any single question, but if you're just literally going to be a douchebag, then I'm going to kick you out. Apparently, Tony Khan's when will Tony make the big announcement of you coming to AEW? Diversity does include hiring a conservative. Yeah.
Diversity, equity, and inclusion. We gotta hire conservatives.
Do you follow any current wrestling? Like, do you pay attention to what's going on in AEW or WWE?
Do I?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I like pop in and out. Yes. Mm-hmm. The time commitment in my life doesn't allow me to watch 8 hours of wrestling a week, but I do watch the highlights and keep up. Yep, for sure.
The reason I ask is because AEW has become quite strange. We've talked about the CM Punk stuff, how he had his meltdown after, the press conference and all that. And, now there's a beef between Andrade and Sammy Guevara, where apparently punches were thrown backstage and Andrade was sent home, but Sammy was in the main event of Dynamite that night. So, do you think Tony Khan should at least put his foot down at some point and be like, hey, number one, get off of social media and stop bringing real life in? Like, if you're in an angle, that's one thing. I mean, you can promote it, but I mean, this is like a real life beef between the two. And three, like, between the fight with Punk and the Bucks we've talked about, that, that's a crazy thing. So now you have this. You have women, that shouldn't be on TV because they're sloppy, and not just women, but a lot of the men too. There's a lot of botches, a lot of spots that probably shouldn't be done. And I know accidents happen, but it seems like week after week after week, someone's potentially going to get hurt there. When does Tony need to just put the kibosh and everything and say, look, we need to stop beefing on Twitter. We need to get along. We're all on the same team here. And if you can't get along, then you will be sent home and you'll be suspended. But it seems like the boys are allowed to do pretty much whatever they want. And Tony just accused of just being a money mark.
Yeah, and look, I know somebody was coming out here poking fun at Tony Khan, and they were poking fun at Rob Black and everything. Look, whatever's in the past with Rob Black, I'm not aware. You know what I mean? And look, it's not about money with professional wrestling. I'm not aware. Whatever it is, again, people are going to have accusations that they make. that just comes with the territory.
Right.
As far as like AEW, look, hey man, sometimes it does seem like the Wild West, like, you know what I mean, with the with the altercations that are happening. But look, it's another brand where guys are making a living, and they got an incredibly deep talent roster. I can't pretend to say that, oh, hey, they should do this or do that better. Look, that's just kind of armchair quarterback from my standpoint. But look, I think we mentioned it on the podcast a few weeks ago. There's a lot of veterans in that locker room, and I think the company could benefit from using that, veteran leadership to have those kind of have that fine line.
At least put the producers in charge, or like have somebody be the enforcer. No, aren't there, obviously, but I mean, have somebody.
The enforcer works there.
The enforcer needs to like keep an eye on the locker room, man, and make sure like everything is copacetic. But it just seems like, like, hey, Mike, Hitman's in the house. What's up, Mike? Unless on the spot, Tony won't do a single thing. I mean, he let CM Punk run down his EVPs during the press conference.
Yeah, that was
all out, and he's sitting right there. You know what I mean?
Professional, yeah. I know. And look, those guys are half responsible for this amazing salary that you're getting. Like, why are you running them down? Yes. It is what it is, man. It's great that there's another podcast, and I hope that it lasts. I really do. What is crazy to me is, especially with Andrade, like I traveled a lot with him. And he's a old school, tough as nails. His family grew up. He grew up his family in the business. Yeah. I don't know what would make him just outright go wild like that. You know what I mean? And I've heard rumors that he's like trying to get fired. Like, it's crazy. You know what I mean? So I don't know, man.
Maybe Trips wants him back, and him and Charlotte can be happy on air. Wayne Jerry says, this just happened at the beginning of SmackDown, but Paul Heyman dissed Jordan Peterson and Ben Shapiro during his promo. Does that shock you coming from the New York Jew, Paul Heyman? I mean, news alert. He's probably not a conservative, but
hey, Paul Heyman getting some pop culture in. Nice.
He's good at that. He's a heat magnet. That's his job. He's a heel. That's what he's supposed to do, regardless of where he stands. That's his job. So I applaud Paul Heyman for staying relevant and doing some of the best stuff in his career. Angela Ward wants to know, throughout your career, what would you say was the most memorable wrestling moment for you, Drake?
Memorable moment for me as a wrestler?
Or as a ref. I mean, just, I guess it all encompassing.
Yeah, I'll do one of each.
One of each, sure. That's fine.
Winning Best of the Best in CZW in 2014 before I went to WWE, that was a really, really cool night, and just kind of a perfect send-off, so to speak. I had 3 matches that evening, and by God's grace, became the only guy to win the Tournament of Death and the Best of the Best. So that was a really cool feather in the cap, so to speak, and just a great way to, say goodbye to the home where I was. CCW for 8 years. So that was really cool. I think most memorable moment as a referee would definitely be WrestleMania 34, New Orleans Superdome. Reffing Triple H and Ronda, Triple H and Stephanie McMahon versus Ronda Rousey and Kurt Angle. That was really cool, and it was kind of a special moment for me as well because a childhood friend of mine and friend of Valerie's as well that we know for many years, Cliff Sharp. He wrestled as Clifton Crunk on the Indies. He passed away that weekend, so it was kind of cool, like one of us that, we came up in backyard wrestling together and everything like that. And to kind of, I'm sure he was looking at me on WrestleMania. I thought that was pretty cool.
Do you like Ted Nugent and Garth Brooks?
I like them both. I love Ted Nugent way more, though. I will go on record to say Stranglehold by Ted Nugent is the absolute greatest workout song ever.
Absolutely right.
And like one of the best. Johnny Moss used to come out and say Stranglehold by Ted Nugent on the Indies in the UK. It was incredible. Incredible.
Cliff married you too, says Valerie.
Yeah, he was our ordained minister. Yeah, at our wedding. Yep.
That's pretty awesome. Drake, are you white or mixed?
Tony Khan's all over the chat.
Nothing is off limits here. We'll answer any questions.
Tony Khan's all over the chat.
You're tanned, obviously.
My children used to think that I was dark skinned when they would color pictures of their family pictures. But no,
I mean, with the name Wuertz, I mean,
nowadays I spend a lot of time on roofs, so I do get a little bit of Florida sun.
My buddy Mike wants to know, if you were to return to pro wrestling, like actually wrestling, as a wrestler, what promotion would you prefer?
I'm going to XPW.
There you go. Drake, why were you not in the Vice documentary on CZW a few years ago? DJ Hyde and Nick Gage were in it. Were you ever asked or approached?
I was in WWE at the time.
So they wouldn't allow you to do it anyway, right?
Yeah. I mean, it was filmed on location at Tournament of Death, if I remember correctly.
Okay, gotcha.
Yep.
Another email from Five Finger Death Punch fan. Drake, I did not know you had a mailbag. Sorry, dude. That's literally my fault. But when you were in WWE, did any of the wrestlers talk about politics? And were they mostly right or left? And he said, congratulations being on the ballot. This is a really old email. I'm so sorry. You have since lost your campaign. But so we've kind of mentioned, without really naming names, like who might be left, who might be right. I mean, it's quite obvious who were against you. Like, you had issues with Keith Lee and some of the guys in NXT that were kind of vocal about it.
Yeah, not necessarily issues, just differences. Strong differences.
Right.
Yeah.
But anybody, I mean, obviously we know Gunner's on the. Yeah, we know Gunner's a conservative, so that's no secret. But and supposedly Elias or Ezekiel might be.
I would say so. I remember when Trump first ran in 2016. A lot of us would talk in the locker room, and then like when it became more polarizing, fewer guys talk. But there would be a whole lot of the guys would look around and be like, "Hey, Drake." And then they, talk about conservative stuff. They just wanted to make sure nobody was listening. You know what I mean? Like everybody came to me that was any kind of MAGA person at all. So no, we talked about it quite a bit, but it wasn't like, look, and I've said it before and I'll say it again, like in the wrestling business, I mean, once you walk in those doors, it doesn't matter what your political affiliation is or anything like that. Like you're there to do business and you're there to, protect each other as well. Your main job is to get that person home to their family the same way that they left them. You know what I mean? And so whether you're unvaccinated, whether you're conservative, whether you're liberal, whether, you're independent, whatever it may be. But, to answer your questions, a lot of the tippy top guys would talk to me about it as
well. What caused or made the transition from wrestler to referee?
Yeah. Well, man, it was crazy the way it worked out, because we were living in Northern California, and I was coming really kind of like had the best couple of years of my wrestling career, and I was coming towards the tail end, and was kind of thinking about getting out anyway. My wife and I have been talking about it. She was pregnant with our second child, and then I got the offer from WWE to come to a tryout, and really the person responsible for making me a referee was William Regal. He'd mentioned that, they could bring me on as a wrestler, but, my body had been through quite a bit. I might not have a very long run, but he felt I could contribute more and have a lot more opportunity being a referee with my in-ring experience and helping out, because they recruit a lot of people that have never wrestled before. Right. And so it's good to have kind of that calming presence in the ring of somebody that has been where they've been and it can help them out and help them remind them of camera shots and things of the sort like that. So, no, William Regal is 100% responsible for me becoming a referee. I loved it. I absolutely love it.
Yeah, he said it was one moment, you're in the Tournament of Death, and bang, months later you're a referee, and and as well as the battle scars that you have. Which you ever see the show Arrow? You ever watch that?
I have not.
Okay, so the main character, the Green Arrow, was played by Stephen Amell, and
he wrestled at SummerSlam one year.
He did. Yes, he did. But his character on the show actually had like horrible, like torturous, like knife scars and stuff like that for being trapped on an island and getting beaten and all that. So he kind of reminds me of you when I see like all those like scars on your back and on your shoulder and all that. So you went through a lot of plates, a lot of glass, a lot of barbed wire.
And you know what's funny in the NXT dressing room, especially if they would recruit somebody from the NFL or something, and obviously we're in the dressing room after the gym, like we're changing, I take my shirt off, and somebody would be like, what are all those scars from? You know what I mean? People that like had no idea of my wrestling past. Right. And then it would become a whole new conversation of, well, hey, actually, here's what I remember Finn Balor one time was like, dude, you ever seen what he'd done before? And Adam Cole was like, I used to like mop up his blood at the ECW arena. Like, you know what I mean? Like, Adam Cole was a trainee whenever I was doing death matches in Philadelphia. So, it was, the conversations that happened in there that would arise just from somebody seeing my scars was pretty funny.
Not only, but that, I mean, you're jacked too. So, I mean, like referees aren't supposed to look that great, right? So, but then when they see the scars, they're like, that's not your normal referee. No. He's one of the boys. So, let's see. Tony Khan's back. He says, what kind of movies do you like? And are you a Marvel and DC fan?
Movie. I'm a big comedy fan, and either or. I'm not hugely into either or of Marvel or DC.
Daniel Smith wants to know, why didn't you ever go to TNA? You would have been great in the X division. I agree with that.
Thank you so much. You know what? Just the opportunity never came up. I was pretty much full time in like CZW and then in Pro Wrestling Guerrilla in California, and it just never worked out. And so whenever I never really reached out or anything like that. I tried to have a tryout Ring of Honor a time or two, but that just didn't happen either. Like I've, had a great thing going in CZW and IWA Mid-South and then, toward the end of my wrestling career and in PWG and had some international stuff going on. So, I stayed plenty busy with that. I certainly would have gone. I absolutely would have. But again, the stars didn't align.
Right. Wayne wants to know, what are your predictions for the U.S. House and Senate? We got big elections coming up here soon.
Yeah, I think definitely we take the House. I think the Senate's going to be tough. They're in Nevada. There's an Adam Laxalt who has a chance of flipping that seat in the Senate, and then I want to say in Arizona, Blake Masters has a good chance as well. Good young conservative. And they could flip that Senate seat. I think Lord willing, Marco Rubio here in Florida, he hangs on. I think he's got I want to say like a 6-point lead on Val Demings right now. And so we got to make sure Marco Rubio gets reelected. So the Senate's going to be thin, but I do think that we overtake the Senate. I think in the House side, we not only flip those 5 seats that we need to take control. I think it's just a massive red wave. I dare say, I hope it becomes not just a red wave, but like a conservative wave. And I hope that we have something like in 2010 when we had the Tea Party, which spawned a lot of great representatives out of that time frame.
Absolutely.
Because they take the House and the Senate, then it's just a legislative graveyard for anything that Joe Biden wants to do.
Correct.
And then, I mean, if you even go back to the 90s, like Clinton's second term, he almost had to go a little more middle, not because he wanted to,
right?
But because Newt Gingrich and all the Republicans, they overwhelmingly took over the House, and so Clinton had to kind of play along to get, you know what I mean? So there's a chance some things could be fixed in the next 2 years. 24 is the big year for sure.
But at least Bill was smooth, right? I mean, he's a smooth cat. He was likable. I mean, he knew he was a great politician.
Well, you got to think. So his second term, I remember the quote. He said, "Oh, the era of big government is over." That's something he would have never said in '92. You know what I mean? Once Newt Gingrich and the Republicans took over the House, that's when he had to become a little more center.
That is true. Mike wants to know, if you could eject one into orbit with a bomb attached, who would it be, Nadler or Schumer?
Jerry, Schumer for sure. Yes. Chuck Schumer.
I absolutely agree. Your wife wants to mention there's so many dark sides in wrestling: sex, drugs, death. So much toll on wrestlers. We lost more than we didn't. One thing that she would love to see that you provide would be a resource to those who need. So you still have a lot of friends in the business, obviously.
A ton.
Would you like to be?
We lost a lot of friends.
Be a counselor to some of the boys, or I mean.
Yeah, you know what? I absolutely would. She brings up a great point. So me coming up as a wrestling fan, even in the 90s and the early 2000s, you would hear all these tragic stories of all these like big name pro wrestlers dying. Whether it's Rick Rude or Louis Spicoli, or the list goes on and on and on.
Yeah.
Wow, that's crazy. And then, like, in my generation, as I'm standing here today, like, there's more, double digits of the friends that came up in my generation that are gone. There's Trent Acid, J.C. Bailey, Danny Havoc, Brain Damage, Nate Hatred, Justice Payne. The list goes on and on, and it's tragic. It really is. And whether it was from addiction or whether it's suicide, we just lost Sarah Lee. It's like,
I know, I saw that.
We just lost Sarah Lee. Like, I was there when she tried out in Tough Enough in her early years in NXT, and when I worked in NXT, was very close to Wesley. I just can't imagine what they're going through. So I do think we need to have a resource for sure. Whether they're in the business, out of the business. One little thing that me and Chad did actually when we were in NXT before all the COVID nonsense is we actually had a weekly Bible study for guys, from our church, but also mainly from people from the Performance Center. And we would have 12, 13 people sometimes every Wednesday at 7:30 in the morning, sometimes 6:30 in the morning. We'd meet and have coffee and read a chunk of scripture and just talk about life. And that was really, really cool. A couple guys came to really develop a relationship with Christ out of those Bible studies. One Wednesday we even had Jeff Jarrett there, and Shawn Michaels was there every week, and Road Dogg, Steve Carino. So it was a really cool group. So I think definitely we need something like that, and I would love to spearhead it.
Let's see. Tony wants to know, did you see that Rhino Peachtree Trump Ben Sassy quit the Senate and is going to become the president of Florida University?
I did, yeah. The anti-MAGA pro-impeachment Ben Sass leaving his Senate seat in Nebraska to become the president of Florida, University of Florida. So
that's weird, right?
Yeah. One of our state representatives, Anthony Sabatini, had a lot to say about that. So I would suggest checking out his Instagram for a little more insight on that whole situation.
Let's see. Daniel wants to know, do you know that YouTube channel Red Eagle Politics? He's really good on polls, and he's a conservative.
I do. I know about it now. I'll have to check it out.
Mike says he's partial to what Sarah died from. He's very, very close to leaving Earth due to a sinus infection that spread due to aspergillitis, mold infection. And it didn't help that he wore a mask, which made him breathe it in more and spread. And he's very lucky to be here right now. Sarah, if she recovered, didn't even know that she still had it in her. It's a freak thing, right? It's not something that's easily detectable when it came to Sarah. So, it's just so unfortunate. She's so young. It's a sad thing. What are some of the coolest matches you got to ref? You've mentioned the one at WrestleMania, but did you ref the final beat with Gargano and Ciampa?
I did. And the cinematic match. Absolutely, I did. Yeah.
How long did it take to put all that together? Just peel back the curtain a little bit.
And I remember because that was March or April 2020, right when everything started. Because this is when we were filming like 4 weeks of TV in one day. And so actually we filmed 3 episodes of NXT earlier in the day, and then we filmed the cinematic match at nighttime. So I was actually at the venue that day from 9 a.m. until 2 in the morning. That match specifically, it took about 4 hours to film.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Who put all that together? Who wrote that? Or who produced
that?
So
Hunter's brainchild. Shawn Michaels had a lot to do with it, and then Gargano and Ciampa. And then I spliced in a couple ideas here and there as well, like fighting up on the truck and stuff like that. Like I kind of talked with them about that, and then that was really cool. They were like, "Oh, Drake's not afraid to climb up on the truck." That's good. So, and then I want to say I took a bump in that one too. Yeah,
I gotta go back and watch that because
it
was really fun to watch.
Yeah, because Candace came in and did the low blow.
That's right.
That was really, really cool. Used the whole entire Full Sail campus because the university was totally shut down.
Right.
During, especially I know we've talked about it in detail, the early days of the COVID NXT era. But yeah, it was a special thing to be a part of. I was a part of that, and then also the Hollywood Backlot Brawl with Adam Cole and Velveteen Dream.
Yeah.
Happened a few months later. So yeah, you'll have to ask Valerie sometime. She's got some great perspective about the shutdowns and me going to work at NXT and being gone for 2 days and threatening to keep me away from home for 2 weeks because of contact tracing. It was crazy. It really was.
Is it weird? Like, was it weird for the boys to all right, here's where we're going to set up. We got to change cameras. This is what we're doing. And laying it out in storyboards. The weird
part about those cinematic matches, again, because it takes so long, you would film it in like little bits and say, it's not even really segments. You're filming like a couple minutes at a time and then like literally cut. And then you got to get, because wrestling, it's very adrenaline driven, especially, you're hitting each other with chairs and weapons.
And the Vince too,
it hurts twice as much. You know what I mean? And so, and then those guys, they peeled up the mats of the ring and were taking bumps on the exposed wood boards and everything like that. So, yeah, man, it was crazy. You know what I mean? Because you get going and then all of a sudden you got to stop, and then we got to change cameras. Or the worst part was having to refilm something as well.
Right. With the beauty of editing, though, you never knew, though, right? I mean, it was just one seamless match. And were you a fan of that?
The drone cameras made it really cool as well.
Yes.
Those the overhead shots.
They did. Were you a fan of that cinematic stuff? I mean, it's obviously groundbreaking because, during COVID, you had to
do it at the time. And look, there were so many of the matches where it was either in front of nobody or it was in front of just like some of the students. And so, taking the cards that you were dealt and just making something really cool out of that. I was a huge fan of it, whether it was the graveyard match or the final beat that I did.
Good. Yeah.
Backlot brawl, whatever it may be. I think it was a great opportunity to just really express some creativity and kind of take things out of bounds a little bit,
What did you think of the John Cena Bray Wyatt cinematic?
Oh, that was a trip. I think some people didn't like it. I thought it was cool.
I thought it was too.
Yeah, because it was it also, brought a throwback to some of the NW. You know what I mean? There was a whole lot of inside baseball to it.
There was, yes. Yeah. Did you, Wayne says, did you see the NXT's going back to the black and gold? Do you think they have some characters like Braun Breaker and Tony D'Angelo that might do bad because they don't have the best work rate?
I love that they're going back to the black and gold, and no, I disagree. Those guys will be fantastic. Because look, even in the original black and gold, not everybody was a 5-star, American Alpha revival, picture perfect match. I mean,
you got to have a mixture, right? Like Keith Lee and Dijak and guys like that.
Not even that; those guys were good, but like your AOP or Sanity, guys like that they weren't like the most finesse filled, cleanest professional wrestlers, but they were brutal and they're brawny and brawlers. So I think you got to have some diversity in your character mix within the roster. And Braun Breaker, I mean, he's incredible. He's absolutely incredible. Yeah. Tony D'Angelo's got a ton of charisma. No, I think those guys will be great, and especially if you put them with the right people.
Are you surprised that Trips is just kind of erasing everything that Vince did? Like, 2.0 was Vince and Bruce's thing. We need it back to where I started it. It's no big surprise there, right?
No surprise at all. Not surprising.
Mike wants to know, what was your favorite tournament of death?
Oh, the favorite one I participated. You know what? The last one that I did, 2012, I think it was. Yeah, the last one, because I went to the finals. And it was cool because that was after I just gotten clean and sober and I'd gotten in like really good shape. And so like from the year prior or the last time that they'd seen me turn to death, I was like a whole nother person. And it was cool. I had three matches with three different opponents, three different types of matches. And I had Roy Mondo in the first round. That told a story. Then I had Danny Havoc in the second round, and then I lost to Masada in the finals and no rope barbed wire. The match I had with Danny Havoc, like me and Danny Havoc singles match and tournament of death, like it was really, oh man, that was so special. I kind of, I certainly don't miss getting bashed in the head with light tubes, but I wish I can go back to that moment in time and just really absorb it and soak it in and just, you know what I mean? Just because we had so much fun. And to somebody on the outside, they're like, man, you guys are crazy. You're talking about having fun. You're slamming each other in these barbed wire pits. You know what I mean? Like, it was just a chemistry that he and I had, a love for what we were doing, and just, just the how much we enjoyed being out there in front of the crowd. And we did this, like, we wanted to pull this off. I remember me and Danny Havoc did, and we were like, if it comes off, it's going to be awesome. To where I lit a bundle of light tubes on fire, and then I put lighter fluid in my mouth and blew fire at him, and then
Ricky Steamboat style.
Yeah, blew fire at him and then hit him with a flaming bundle of light tubes. We're like, dude, if we can pull this off, because like you got to be careful, because if the flame spit the wrong way, or it'll be a dud. And so it turned out great. And then I hit him with a Lamahi straw cradle, and he kicked out. And so, like, we were just so excited that came off. And we just came back we were getting ready to go on a Japan tour as well. So, man, we were just on top of the world at that time. And it was great for me to be able to see what I could do, like being sober and being this new person, you know what I mean? And being an actual wrestler. So that was cool.
So I can imagine that in the mid and late 90s, when the backyard wrestling videos were popular, you probably watched those.
Yes. Oh, yeah. I had the VHSs. Absolutely.
And
then we started our own backyard promotion. We were on the local news in Indianapolis, and we were in the local newspaper, the Indianapolis Star, in 2001. So, no, we were all over it. Yeah.
I do have two deathmatch questions just of my own. What was the worst thing you got hit with, or the worst spot, I guess? Like, you're like, oh,
you know what, the thing that hurt the most, and it's not even that like huge or spectacular. In Japan they had those Japanese kenzans that they use to grind fruit.
Yes.
I got one put in my head, and I got hit with a chair, and it like dug like into my skull, and they had to use pliers to get it out. It was definitely the most painful thing that ever happened to me. And then anything that had to do with heights, I didn't like jumping off balconies or coming off balconies.
Right.
If you notice, like, whenever the times that I did do it, if anybody watches, like, I would get up there and do whatever and get off there really quick. I would just jump off really, really quick. And so I didn't like waste my time up there. Like, oh, hey, we're going to do, like, I would get up on the balcony or whatever and just get down really fast. You know what I mean? So not a huge fan of heights whatsoever.
Your wife says death matches are never, ever, ever happening again. Now, with you, Drake, or in general, Val? That's what I want to know. It's a death match thing.
She would have it all shut down if she could. Yeah.
Is it still a thing that you know of in the Indies? Are death matches still a thing in the Indies that you know?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. They sure are. They're way crazier than when I used to do them, though.
I'm sure Nick Gage is still competing in a lot of those.
Yeah. He's better than ever.
Is he misunderstood, or is he just legit crazy like New Jack was?
He's one of the absolute best characters in all professional wrestling. Him and Jon Moxley both, they're just, you can just really get caught up in their characters, and just the intensity and the presence. Like being in the ring, and when Nick Gage's music hits and he's coming out, it's a really, really cool feeling. You're like, oh wow, I'm in the middle of something special right now. You know what I mean? So
absolutely,
it was cool. I got to wrestle Nick Gage in a no rope barbed wire and ECW Arena in Philly in a main event, and like that was one of my favorite matches that I ever did, and it was really special too. It really was. But just being out there with Nick Gage in that atmosphere and that presence, it was awesome.
Mike says his cousin used to set up for CZW years ago. He never got to wrestle, but apparently you did a spot with him and put him through a table.
Awesome. Well, tell him I said thank you.
Yeah, and if you could say who that is, Mike, maybe Drake might remember him.
Might draw memory a little bit.
You have taken a lot of shots to the head, so I mean, it's understood. Tony wants to know, well, you're an Indiana guy. Do you consider Southern Indiana in Indiana or the South?
So Evansville and below is the South.
Okay, that's fair. Let's see what else we got here. Mike says you were different than other deathmatch guys. You actually looked like you could deliver the moves and the spots. I mean, you're an athletic guy, and you were actually a great grappler. So I agree with that.
I appreciate it. And look, I always wanted to kind of do whatever I could to set myself apart, especially when we were in Japan. Doing those Japan matches, 5, sometimes 6 nights a week, you really want to set yourself apart. So It was cool, man, and I was fortunate enough to work with a lot of great talent.
Japan was weird because you had your age, All Japan, New Japan, typical, pro wrestling style, maybe a little bit of lucha brought in there, but then you had Pro Wrestling Noah, you had War, you had the King of the Deathmatch stuff there too. It was like almost two different kind of genres of wrestling.
Mm-hmm. And then you had the comedy too, DDT.
Yes.
Yep.
I've seen videos of Kenny Omega doing some very strange things with Michael Nakazawa, but this is a family show, and we won't talk about that here. But what do you think is more popular? I mean, well, that's probably a stupid question. New Japan is pretty much the
New
thing,
Japan is the number one company. But I can tell you,
did you have good crowds for the deathmatch stuff there?
Absolutely, it was great. Whenever I was over there, it was really, really respected. Like the deathmatch wrestlers in Japan, I remember, like, in America, it's respected to a degree, but as a whole, the grand scheme of things are like, oh, those deathmatch guys are crazy and they're weird. But like over there in Japan, it was, kind of goes back to like that samurai warrior type atmosphere or type vibe. Where deathmatch, they were called fighters. Deathmatch fighters were like revered and respected and feared, and like mainstream media and mainstream wrestling news, the magazines all covered it just like they covered everything else. It wasn't looked upon as like the bastard stepchild of pro wrestling as it is sometimes here in the States. Like it was just like, man, it was legit, and again, they're athletes, and so it was a whole different vibe over there. But no, Big Japan, I mean, the Korakuen Hall shows were always huge. A lot of times the shows in Yokohama would have 5,000-6,000 people. And look, they, I obviously I don't keep up with Japanese wrestling, much at all anymore. But during that time, the 5 tours where I was over there, again, as I kind of mentioned earlier, I mean, we were on the road and on the buses, 4 to 6 times a week.
Yeah, and unfortunately, Antonio Inoki just passed away last week, so that's a big loss. Founder of New Japan. Mrs. Ward wants to know, was that injury in the head worse?
It was. It was. I did almost, a lot of people might know. You can find it on YouTube, but I did almost lose half my nipple in a 200 light tubes match.
Mike says you're very lucky to have your vision due to light tubes, as the gas they emit can ruin your eyes. Not just that, into shards of glass too, right? I mean, they're I was never a light tube fan. I always thought maybe
we survived and we thrived.
You did, and thank God that you did. Mr. Fluffball wants to know, when you were in CZW, did women compete in matches?
So during my era, I mean, Mickey Knuckles would compete in death matches. I remember that. So there was like a women's division, but Mickey, and I want to say like maybe Annie Social, there were a few that would actually compete with the men in the matches.
Gotcha. Mike says Wesley got put through a table by you.
Cool.
Let's see what else we got here. Daniel wants to know, when you were competing against AEW in the ratings, did the wrestlers worry about AEW beating NXT? So when they went live on Wednesday, were you still part of that then?
Oh yeah. We were. That was October 2019. Oh yeah, big time.
Was there a mentality in back with the boys like there was?
Yes.
That's good.
Not with Triple H. He would say, "Oh, it doesn't matter. We don't care." With us,
but then he calls them out during their Hall of Fame speech. So
no, with us, absolutely it did. We paid attention to it every single week. Very anybody that says that they didn't, then they're kind of half-fibbing.
It's taboo now by the woke mob, but do you still celebrate Columbus Day?
Yes, we celebrate Columbus Day. Yes, we do.
He gets a bad rap. I mean, he wanted to go to India for some spices. He gets lost. I mean, look, they didn't have GPS back then. I mean, they're just compasses. I don't even know if they had compasses. They just went by the moon and the stars. So he ended up in America, and stuff happens. Oh yeah, your lungs get messed up from light tubes too, says your wife.
I'm by the grace of God, man. I'm
no breathing problems at all.
Incredibly healthy, in best shape of my life.
And you can walk. I mean, not just walk, but I mean, yeah, you are in great physical shape. What do you? I mean, obviously God brought you through that, but I mean, is that the sole reason how you got through most of that?
No, I mean, physically staying in shape as well. Again, I'm not a crazy weightlifter or nothing like that, but I try to stay active. At least 5-6 days a week.
Right.
I'm not I don't work out in the gym for hours at a time. I mean, sometimes it might just be 20-minute blaster in my garage, but I just stay active. My kids keep me young and healthy as well. You know what I mean? I got a 4-year-old. My youngest one's getting ready to turn 4 on Sunday. So, I work a lot, but, I try to make sure that the time that I have here at home with my kids, I'm very intentional with it. So they keep me busy. They keep me healthy. They keep me young. And just, while I was still in the midst of being a full-time wrestler, really, man, just a lot of mobility and just staying active, just staying in shape. I'm not like a crazy diet guy. Like there was a time like when I first lost the weight, like, Valerie did my diet and, I was very, very strict, just, tuna and black coffee and all that and wraps and all that. But like now, like, man, dude, like, if we want to order pizza for a family night, I'll eat it. It's not not a big deal, but I just make sure I stay active and I work hard. And so that's what's really helped me. I've tried DDP yoga. I've tried some other stuff. It helps, but man, I can just say, just be active and just try to keep yourself young. I'm 38 now, and I feel better.
Are you really? I thought you were younger than that, man.
No, I just turned 38 last month. At 38, I can honestly say I feel better than I did at 22.
Well, you look great.
Thank you.
You really do. And I don't know if we ever talked about your age. I thought you were 28, man. I'm telling you, you look young, man. You still look like a young bar.
I do got some gray hairs under this hat.
That's true. Daniel wants to know, have you ever been to Boston, and why did NXT never do a takeover there?
I have been to Boston. I have been to Boston. I love Boston.
I do too.
Specifically, Saugus, Massachusetts, right outside of Boston. One of my favorite restaurants in the whole entire world, possibly my favorite restaurant in all of America, Kowloon, the Kowloon restaurant in Saugus, Massachusetts. Incredible, very friendly to the wrestlers. I mean, just all you can eat anything. Kowloon was incredible. We did do a couple NXT shows and like I said, right outside of Boston. Why did we never do a takeover there? It just when the big takeovers always lined up with wherever one of the big 4 main roster events was.
True, that's true.
So again, if Royal Rumble was in Philly, we'd do a takeover at Wells Fargo Center in Philly. If it was in Phoenix, then we would do it at the arena where the Suns play. You know what I mean? Like that's just where it worked out. And logistically, we just never did one in Boston, which is surprising to me that we hadn't. We did Brooklyn multiple times. We did Chicago multiple times, LA multiple times, but not sure why we didn't do Boston. I can tell you, I appreciate Boston. I love Boston, but I really love going to Worcester, Massachusetts. I do love Worcester.
I do too. I've been to the Centrum many times. I grew up in Connecticut, so I'm a New England guy.
Okay.
I've actually seen 3 of the big 4 in Boston. I went to WrestleMania 14. I went to a Rumble, and I went to a SummerSlam there too. But that was pre-NXT. Yep. But Boston's a hot crowd, man. I love Boston's so clean. Like for a big city.
Yeah.
It's a clean town. They take it. Well, I mean, don't go to Gloucester.
Yeah.
don't go to South Boston, but
right.
But no, in Saugus, I've been to Kowloon, and yeah, dude, I love
Kowloon's great. Yeah, it really is. And on the Indies, I worked in the Northeast a lot, Philly and New York and New Jersey. Never stepped foot in Massachusetts in a wrestling ring before I got to WWE. Never. Just never had any Indies there that I worked for or ever. Mm-hmm. And so yeah, it was cool. WWE took me to places that I hadn't been before.
Let's see. Let's scroll down here.
We got a few minutes left.
Yeah, we got about 5 minutes left here. Do wrestlers say words like mark and smark, or is that only internet?
I'm not a fan of that word, and some guys might say it, but look, at the end of the day, I mean, if you think about it, we're all essentially marks. We all love the business. So I think that's a kind of a derogatory term, and for people that are spending their hard-earned time, money to their entertainment dollar, and they value it and putting it into you so that for a few hours out of their day, they can escape life and live life vicariously through the characters that are presented on this professional wrestling show. To say something derogatory about them is, I'm not a fan of it at all.
A lot of wrestlers don't like that word. I mean, they're fans.
Yeah,
We're all
fans. The fans. Yeah.
Mark is a carny derogatory.
Sometimes you can you can amongst speaking to each other, you'd be like, oh, you just being a mark for yourself, bro, or oh man, don't be a mark for that. You know what I mean? Or oh, you're a mark for that. You know, sometimes, but so it's almost a derogatory term, and to say it to fans, just not. I'm not a fan of it. Most guys do not say it.
Right. Bucky Hines wants to know, are you looking forward to working with XPW? Looks like you'll be doing some cool stuff.
Yeah, hey, man, look, we at least got this one show, man, and that's really where we're at. Just kind of excited for the opportunity, and you guys, I think you guys will like what happens.
Mike says if he would ever get his body repaired again, he'd do it right. He'd go back in the wrestling ring.
Good luck to you.
Wayne says you're a big fan of solar panels, but how would solar panels work for somebody like him that lives in a rainy, snowy place near the White Mountains and Appalachian Trail?
Yeah, big fan of solar energy. We have it around our house. Look, whenever it's snowy and rainy, you're not going to produce as much. But during the times where it is sunny, as long as you don't have a lot of trees around your house and everything like that, you'll kind of overproduce, and then you have some credits for whatever it does get to the rainy, snowy times like that. So you're still going to produce, but you're not going to produce as much if there's not, a bunch of sun around. That's why places like Florida and California really should be leading the way on solar.
Least favorite state to wrestle in?
Anybody you want to call out? State to wrestle in? Man, anytime where I got to be in a ring in front of a crowd, I enjoyed it. I can't really say that there was a least favorite. I enjoyed every night that I was in the ring.
No bad crowds, no tough crowds.
Whether it was a wrestler or a referee, I could, I think there's some towns, not necessarily states, but some towns that you didn't necessarily, that you liked more than others. I know, like on the NXT Coconut Loops, we weren't a huge fan of going to Stark, Florida. Right. Stark was always just like it'd always be only no matter how hot NXT was, there'd be like 50 or 70 people there. It's a town in the middle of nowhere in Florida, Stark, Florida. That was always a tough one for us. Oh, Mrs. Wuertz says Delaware. I enjoyed Delaware. I did.
Maryland has too many rules, right? With the sports commissions and all that.
The states where there were commissions were a little tough. Like Maryland was a little tough. You always had to get checked out by the doctor. Yes. I didn't wrestle. I actually, until WWE, I never did a wrestling match or anything in Kentucky, just because they have way too strict of rules and regulations. I enjoyed reffing in Seattle, but the Washington State Commission was a little tough at times. And I tell you what, one place I really, really loved. Mm-hmm. I loved reffing in New York City, at Brooklyn, at the Barclays Center. That crowd was amazing. They were really, really cool.
I'm sure Chicago is a fan favorite, a favorite of the boys too, because it's always a hot crowd.
Yeah.
Have you ever met Donald Trump or Ron DeSantis?
I've met Governor DeSantis many times. Been in many events. Shook his hand, said hello, grabbed some pictures. Never been at many Trump events. Never met him though, or shook his hand or anything like that. But yeah, I've met the governor many times. He's actually, if you go to any event that he's at a press conference, for his position, he's fairly accessible.
Do you like hair metal?
I do. I like hair metal. And I like power ballads. I love the ballad. Like I'm.
Well, you and my wife are gonna like.
Big fan of Tesla. I love Tesla. Tesla's a great band. I love Tesla. I'm a big eclectic mix of music, especially when I'm working out. I do like some 80s hair metal. I like some of the late 90s, 2000s, like Limp Bizkit, Korn, Kid Rock stuff as well. That's just really only like if I'm working out. Other than that, most of the time I'm listening to worship music, or I'll jam some country as well.
My favorite workout song is "Burn It to the Ground" by Nickelback, and I know there's not a lot of Nickelback fans out there, but that's a former Raw theme song, and I'm telling you, dude, that gets you going, man. When you, it's such a good song.
That was like the 2005 Raw era, right?
Yes. Yeah, I believe so. So that ends our live Q&A. I do have one question, since we are post-election season for you specifically. How has life been after campaigning? Has it been difficult to adjust?
You know what? It has been a little. I will say it has been a little different, just because for for a year. I mean, Valerie and I were so knee deep in this, like as far as campaigning, and then it was a redistricting year, so a lot was up in the air. And then finally, when the district settled, we were just full blown into that. And then, doing the podcast and everything, just busy, knocking doors and doing events. Like the events in and of itself was enough to keep you busy, and had a full-time job and coaching baseball and stuff like that. So it was just go. But you know what? We've adjusted well. We're, as I've said before, we're certainly not going anywhere. We're very highly involved with the Republican Party here in Seminole County. My wife has a lot going on. She's legislative chair for Moms for Liberty. She's working a lot with getting volunteers activated to phone bank and knock doors, and she's volunteering at the GOP office. So precinct committee man, sergeant at arms for the party, and so we're heavily involved. This is our community. We're going to stand for conservatism. We're not going to be shy about it. We're certainly not going to bend the knee to any mob or kind of be threatened by any kind of cancel culture. Like, people have tried to cancel us for 2 years now, and like we've stood strong. And so right. You can't be canceled when you believe in what you're doing. And so that's what we're going to do. We're focused on making sure our district in our state stays red, and then Lord, who knows what the Lord has for us in 2024. The opportunities are endless. And so, yeah, it's an exciting time. No longer in candidate mind frame. Now it's like, hey, let's stand for the values of conservatism and make sure that Republicans get elected or reelected. And then, make sure when we have power as Republicans, we actually use that power for good.
That's right.
Rather than what's been done in the past.
I think we won over a fan. Tony says you should do a Q&A every week. Well, thank you.
Tony, come on.
See, if people would hang around and actually listen to you, they might realize you're not a nut job, right? You're a nice person.
I'm just your average, typical king of the death matches, WWE referee, a Christian conservative husband, father of three. Just your typical that guy.
Maybe we should do one once a month, Mr.
Let's do a Q&A once a month. Come on, Rob.
Yes, we'll get on that. So, hey, I appreciate you being here, brother. It's always fun. Number 50 is in the books. Thanks to everybody that came out and hung out with us tonight.
And I want to tell all the uncanceled listeners, we apologize for the past 2 weeks. We were not able to pump out an episode. Couple things happened. Rad Rob had a family vacation. 1, 2, Hurricane Ian happened, and we normally record on Wednesday nights, and Hurricane Ian came blasting through Florida and into Central Florida that Wednesday evening. Been recovering and cleaning up ever since, and so again, we were off of here for a couple weeks. Got a live episode for you today. We'll be back next week, and Lord willing, each and every week thereafter with the Uncanceled Podcast. For those out there, go to prowrestlingtees.com/Drake Younger. Pick up some Drake Younger merch, whether you want the deathmatch stuff or the new stuff. Got all your T-shirts there. Check me out on Instagram at @TheDrakeWuertz, WUERTZ. Check out my wife on Facebook, Valerie Wuertz. She's an influencer on Facebook. Everybody loves her reels, and she pushes out some incredible content there. Be at XPW November the 12th in Newark, New Jersey. A lot more details to come on that. So it's going to be very exciting. So, guys, I appreciate y'all. God bless you.
Your wife is incredible. I told you this many times, you outkicked your coverage by a lot.
100%. 100% outkicked my coverage. Yeah.
And you're willing to.
I thank God every day. Yeah.
All right, guys. Thanks for joining us live here on YouTube. And we will see you next week for another edition of Uncanceled with the man right there, Drake Wuertz. We'll see you next week, guys.
See you guys.
Thanks for listening to Uncanceled with Drake Wuertz. You can follow the show on Twitter and Instagram at UncanceledPod. You can also send us an email at uncanceledpodcast@gmail.com. You've been listening to Uncanceled with Drake Wuertz right here on the Rad Rob Radio Network.